At my brother's wedding, my dad lifted his glass and said, "One son grew into a man. The other just became a disappointment." Everyone laughed, until I grabbed the mic and exposed the secret he's tried hard to hide for 25 years. I never thought a single toast could shatter me. But when my father called me a disappointment in front of everyone, I finally understood they'd pushed me to the edge, and I was done being quiet. Because I held a secret that would make sure none of them ever forgot my name again. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and instantly feel like you don't belong? Not because someone says it, but because it's written in their faces, etched in the silence between fake smiles and forced handshakes? That was me the second I walked into my brother Caleb's wedding rehearsal dinner. I'm Ethan, 29. I work in software, live quietly in a modest apartment, and mostly keep to myself. I'm not flashy, I don't brag, and I've never felt the need to prove myself to anyone, except maybe my dad. Not for his approval, I gave up on that years ago, but because he's made it his life's mission to treat me like I'm the family's unfinished project. My younger brother, Caleb, is the golden boy. Always has been. He's 27, charismatic, ambitious, and never misses a chance to remind everyone how well he's doing. Ivy League, fancy finance job, glossy engagement photos in Napa Valley. He's a walking LinkedIn success story. And my dad? If Caleb sneezes, Dad claps. He's been grooming him since high school to be the man of the house, whatever that means when you have two adult sons under the same roof. I used to think it was just me, this favoritism. Maybe I was sensitive. But over the years, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Caleb gets a flat tire, Dad calls roadside assistance before Caleb even finishes his sentence. I get bronchitis and miss Christmas dinner, and Dad calls me a flake. Caleb crashes Mom's car in college, and Dad blames the manufacturer. I forget to RSVP to a barbecue, and suddenly I'm disrespecting the family legacy. Mom always tried to balance things, but she's sweet, quiet, and I don't blame her. Living with my dad's ego is like walking on a frozen lake in spring. You never know which step will crack. He's a retired military officer, and he still runs family dinners like he's commanding a unit. No talking out of turn, elbows off the table, and for the love of all that is holy, don't interrupt him during his Sunday football decompression time. He believes in earning respect, but only applies that rule to me. Caleb could slap a waiter, and Dad would say the guy probably deserved it. So when Caleb's wedding rolled around, I already knew I was going to be more prop than person. I RSVP'd early, offered to help set up, even volunteered to design the wedding website since it's my wheelhouse. The only response I got was a thumbs-up emoji from Caleb and a forwarded email from Dad telling me what color suit not to wear so I didn't ruin the photos. No thanks, no appreciation, just instructions. Typical. But I still showed up. I always do. Because for all the ways they've made me feel like a second-class citizen in my own family, I can't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, if I keep showing up, something will shift. That someone will finally notice I'm not the screw-up they've decided I am. Or maybe I'm just stubborn. Either way, I walked into that rehearsal dinner in my best black suit, gift in hand, and that familiar pit in my stomach. The venue was this overpriced vineyard Caleb and his fiancée, Chloe, rented for the entire weekend. It screamed, "Look how successful we are." Exposed wood, fairy lights, servers in black bow ties. I scanned the room, catching sight of my dad at the center, laughing with Chloe's parents like he just told the funniest joke. Caleb spotted me first. He gave me that grin, half warm, half condescending, that he always used when he'd beaten me at something as kids. "Ethan, you made it," he said, clapping me on the back. "We were starting to think you'd bail."
Yeah.
Wouldn't miss it, I forced a smile. "You clean up nice," he added with a wink that felt more mocking than genuine. I brushed it off and made my way to the gift table to drop off the custom-engraved whiskey glasses and a bottle of 18-year-old scotch I'd spent way too much on. I turned around and nearly bumped into Dad. He was holding white wine, looking at me like I tracked mud into the White House. "Glad you could finally grace us with your presence," he said. "It's the rehearsal dinner, Dad. I'm right on time." He smirked. For once, I let that slide. Years of practice. But something in his tone stuck with me. It wasn't just a jab, it was calculated, like he wanted to remind me, in front of everyone, where I stood. I looked at Caleb, surrounded by groomsmen, laughing. Chloe walked in shortly after, glowing, and the room practically orbited her. I stood by the bar, invisible again. Dinner was served, toasts were made, and I sat through every speech, every clink of the glass, nodding and smiling like I was part of it. Chloe's dad made a charming speech. Her mom cried. One of Caleb's college friends told a wild story. Everyone laughed. I stayed seated, waiting for Dad to call on me. It never came. Even when Caleb asked if anyone else wanted to share, Dad looked right past me and raised his glass. That's enough. Let's not drag this on. Let's let the man of the hour have the last word. That stung, but I swallowed it down. After dinner, I stepped outside for air, reminding myself it wasn't my night. It was Caleb's. Maybe I was being too sensitive again. Maybe. That's when I overheard it. I was near a large open window when I heard Dad's voice. Loud, unmistakable, a few drinks in. Caleb's always been a natural leader. Always knew what he wanted. Not like Ethan. That one's still trying to figure out if he wants to be a man or a mouse. Laughter. Actual laughter. I froze. My heart pounded. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. But no, it was him. My father. The same man who helped me build Lego castles before Caleb was born. The same man who taught me to ride a bike then walked away when I fell, telling me to man up. The same man who stopped asking about my work the second Caleb became a senior analyst. I backed away from the window, taking the long way around the patio, past the grapevines, letting the cool air hit my face. I don't know how long I was out there. When I came back, the night was winding down. People were saying goodbyes, making plans for tomorrow. I nodded to Caleb, told him I'd see him in the morning. He gave me that same grin. You sure you're going to make it? And that was it. That was the moment I decided I was done playing the punching bag. Because what none of them knew, what Dad in particular had no idea about, was that I had something he desperately didn't want getting out. A secret he buried so deep, he probably thought it was gone for good. But I'd found it months ago. And until tonight, I wasn't sure what to do with it. But now I had a plan. I wasn't just going to attend the wedding. I was going to make sure it was a day my father would never forget. Not for the reasons he wanted. And definitely not for the reasons anyone in that room expected. By the time I got back to my hotel room, the groomsmen gift bag sat on my bed like a slap in the face. Inside was cologne, socks with Caleb's initials, and an itinerary that felt more like military orders. My name was spelled wrong on the card, Nathaniel instead of Ethan. Caleb knew I hated that, but of course, the wedding planner probably got her info from him. The next morning started early. Breakfast at 7, photos at 9, ceremony run-through at 11. Everything was tight. I showed up 5 minutes early for the photo shoot in the vineyard, fully dressed and ready, only to find they'd already taken most of the shots without me. Caleb was front and center with the other groomsmen, laughing with his best man, Joel. I waved awkwardly. The photographer, an artsy guy with a man bun, looked confused. Oh, you must be, sorry, remind me which one you are, he asked. I'm his brother, I said, walking up. Groomsman. His eyebrows shot up. Oh. We didn't get any notes on a brother. You sure you're on the list? Pretty sure, I muttered. Caleb walked over, smirking. Sorry, Ethan. Miscommunication. We weren't sure you were going to make it on time. I was early. He shrugged. Well, you can jump in a few group shots now. I smiled tightly, stepped into position, and endured 20 minutes of fake smiling while Caleb made sure to place himself between me and the rest of the group in every frame. When the photographer asked for a siblings-only shot, Caleb waved him off. We'll get that later, he said. Don't worry about it. later never came. After the photos, I found myself helping venue staff carry chairs, mostly because no one else offered. I didn't mind helping, I never do, but it felt telling. Every time I turned around, Dad was holding court with Chloe's uncles, telling stories about raising two boys, like we were war stories from his time overseas. The stories always ended the same way, Caleb pulling through, me being a bit too quiet for my own good. The worst part was the way people laughed like it was all in good fun, like I wasn't standing right there. At lunch, the groomsmen got matching watches. Caleb handed them out with a speech for each guy, how they met, what they meant, inside jokes. When he got to me, he hesitated. "Ethan," he said, looking at me like I was a substitute teacher. "Well, you've always been there, I guess." "So, yeah, thanks for coming." He handed me the watch last. No speech, no joke, just an awkward pat on the shoulder and a glance to move on. Everyone laughed nervously. I didn't say a word. Later that afternoon, as final preparations were made, I ducked into the main hall for my phone charger. That's when I saw it. On the far side, a long reception table. The seating chart, printed and framed like a museum piece. I scanned it casually. My name wasn't at the family table, or the groomsmen's table, or anywhere near the front. I was seated at table 14, the last one, in the corner, with distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. That was the first real punch in the gut. The first moment something inside me cracked. I walked outside, needing air. Just air. Maybe a stiff drink, maybe a drive, something, anything. I paced near the gravel lot behind the vineyard where no one could see me. Except someone did. Chloe's younger brother, Liam, maybe 19, full of that casual honesty only kids that age still have. "Hey," he said, jogging up. "You okay, man? You look like someone just shot your dog." "Fine," I said, maybe too quickly. He looked at me. "You're Caleb's brother, right? I thought you were his cousin or something. You're not in any of the family photos." Of course I wasn't. He hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket. A folded sheet of paper. "I found this in the trash earlier. Didn't know if it meant anything, but..." He handed it to me and walked off. I unfolded it. It was the original seating chart, scribbled with notes and edits. My name had originally been up near the front. Groomsmen table circled, then scratched out. And in Dad's handwriting, I'd recognize that jagged all-caps style anywhere. It read, "Better off at table 14. He'll sulk less there." I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes, hours. My hands shook. My ears buzzed. Something in me broke. Not snapped. Broke, like a chain that had finally rusted through. I didn't go back inside. I walked to my rental car, sat in the front seat, and stared at the dashboard. My brain was quiet, too quiet. But behind that silence, something was simmering, slow, heavy, final. This wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't just casual disrespect. This was calculated. Planned. I was being erased. But here's the thing. They'd all forgotten. Probably because I was always so quiet or soft-spoken or the mouse in the room. I know things. I see things. And I don't forget. Like the time 5 years ago when Mom called me in tears, whispering from the laundry room so Dad couldn't hear. She was scared. Said something was off with her finances. That the bank account had a withdrawal she didn't recognize, a big one, $42,000. When she asked Dad, he brushed her off. "Tax stuff," he said. "Investment move. Don't worry about it." But I did worry. So, I pulled the monthly statement from their shared email account. Yes, I still remembered the password because I'd set it up for them in high school. What I found wasn't tax stuff. It was a payment to a woman. The name meant nothing to me at first, but when I looked her up, let's just say the resemblance between her son and my brother Caleb would make anyone's stomach drop. I never told Mom, never told Caleb, never told anyone. I buried it like I was trained to do, like I always did. But that document, those receipts, those paternity tests I ordered myself out of sick curiosity, the email backup I downloaded and stored on a secure cloud folder under a fake username, all of it. It still existed. And it still had Dad's name all over it. I hadn't looked at that folder in years. Until now. When the rehearsal dinner ended, I was barely present. I smiled. I laughed when expected. But in my mind, I was already mapping it all out. The timing, the location, who would be in the room, and what I would say. The wedding day arrived, sunny and perfect. The kind of day people hope for when they drop 40 grand on a vineyard venue. Everyone was buzzing. Bridesmaids in pastel. Groomsmen making sure ties were straight. I kept to myself, checked my notes one last time, made sure the USB drive was in my inside jacket pocket. The ceremony passed in a blur. I walked down the aisle with one of Chloe's cousins. Stood beside Caleb while he said his vows, smiled politely at the appropriate moments. When the couple kissed and the crowd erupted, I clapped with everyone else. But inside, I was miles away. Dinner started. Toasts began. First Chloe's parents, then Caleb's best man, then Chloe herself. And then it was Dad's turn. He stood, champagne glass in hand, wearing his signature smirk. The room quieted. Cameras rolled. He cleared his throat dramatically. Today is a proud day, he began. My younger son, my bright, brilliant, decisive younger son, has stepped into manhood. A provider, a husband, a leader. Caleb grinned. And while I won't name names, Dad continued, chuckling, it's clear that in this family, one son became a man, and the other, well. He paused, smiled, raised his glass, just became a disappointment. Laughter. Actual laughter. Even some of the groomsmen chuckled. My heart pounded in my chest. My hands were steady. I felt nothing and everything all at once. I stood up. Mind if I say a few words? I asked. Dad blinked. It's hardly just a minute, I said. Chloe looked confused. Caleb squinted like he didn't trust whatever was coming next. But I was already walking to the center of the room, to the mic. I took it gently, tapped it once, and when I looked up, the room was silent. Everyone watching. Perfect. You ever feel the air shift in a room before a storm? That sudden vacuum of sound, like the world is holding its breath. That's exactly what it felt like the moment I touched the mic. I looked around the reception hall. Fairy lights twinkled above. Champagne glasses half raised, frozen smiles. I spotted Caleb, staring at me with narrowed eyes. Chloe had that polite, confused smile people wear when they're praying you don't ruin the mood. And Dad. He was frozen mid-sip, glass halfway to his mouth, eyes like daggers. I should have felt nervous. I didn't. I should have second-guessed myself. I didn't. Because in that moment, standing there in a pressed suit I'd paid for myself, in a room full of people who'd written me off, I wasn't the disappointment. I was the only person in that room finally telling the truth. But I didn't say everything. I didn't reveal the secret. Not yet. I took a deep breath and gave a toast. A normal one. Short, simple, polite. I congratulated Caleb and Chloe. Wished them happiness. Made one dry joke about growing up with a brother who used to lock me out of the bathroom just to make me late for school. People chuckled. Then I set the mic down and walked off. I could feel the confusion ripple through the room. Dad looked like he was holding back a snide remark. I let him stew. Because the thing is, revenge isn't about the moment. It's about the lead-up. And mine had just begun. But first, I had to survive what came next. After the reception, I slipped out quietly while everyone else headed to the after-party. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. I knew what was coming, and I wasn't wrong. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from my father. 1 voicemail. Ethan. His voice growled through the speaker. If you ever pull a stunt like that again, grandstanding at your brother's wedding, you're out of this family for good. Do you understand me? I stared at the phone, then deleted the message. Out of the family? As far as I was concerned, I'd never truly been in it. The fallout came faster than I expected. Caleb texted me later that day. Not cool, man. You made the night about you. Chloe unfollowed me on Instagram. And within a week, my parents had accidentally left me out of the family group chat where they shared all the wedding photos. I saw them through my cousin Ashley's phone. Dozens of pictures, speeches, dancing, the bouquet toss. I was in 3 photos total. And in one, I was in the background looking the wrong way. I won't lie, that week hit hard. Harder than I thought it would. Because even though I'd spent years telling myself I didn't care, pretending I'd built up armor against their favoritism and their subtle digs, the truth is, when your own family collectively decides you're expendable, it feels like grief. Grief for a version of yourself that kept holding out hope. I went back to my apartment and crashed. Called in sick to work. Stopped checking my phone. Let dishes pile up. Laundry went unwashed. I didn't even open my blinds for 3 days. It wasn't depression exactly. It was something murkier, a numbness that spread from the inside out. At one point, I stood in front of my mirror and tried to imagine what it would be like to be someone else. Someone louder, funnier, more impressive. Someone like Caleb. Would Dad love me more if I talked about stock portfolios and wore designer watches? Probably not. Because it was never about that. It was about control. And I had stopped playing the part they wrote for me. That's when something shifted. Not all at once. Not some grand moment of clarity. Just a small realization, like the first flicker of dawn under a heavy sky. I still had the truth. And more than that, I had myself. I opened my laptop, clicked into the folder I'd kept untouched for 5 years. The emails, the payment records, the flight itineraries, the correspondence between Dad and the woman whose name still made my chest tighten. It was all still there. I could have blown it all up right then and there, but something told me no, not yet. First, I needed to rebuild. Because when you've been underestimated your entire life, there's nothing more dangerous than finding your footing. So, I got up. I started small. I cleaned my apartment, dusted off the books, cooked myself real meals instead of eating over the sink. I hit the gym, not to get jacked or impress anyone, just to prove I could take care of myself. Then, I turned my attention to work. I'd been coasting at my job for a while, mostly because the voice in my head, Dad's voice, kept saying, "You'll never be a leader." But the thing is, I'm good at what I do. Damn good. I manage back-end systems for a mid-sized tech company. Not glamorous, but stable. And over the years, I'd quietly solved some pretty complex issues that saved the company thousands. I just never talked about it. Now I did. I started documenting my work, submitting detailed reports, speaking up in meetings. My manager noticed. She pulled me aside after a particularly smooth product launch and said, "I don't know what changed, but you've really stepped it up." I stopped apologizing for existing, I told her. She laughed. Whatever it is, keep doing it. 3 months later, I got a promotion, team lead, with a pay bump big enough that I finally moved into a better apartment across town. One with sunlight, a balcony, and a kitchen I didn't hate. I bought a proper espresso machine, a small luxury, but it made me feel like I was building something that belonged to me. And the best part? No one knew. I didn't post about it. I didn't call home to brag. I didn't send some dramatic message to Caleb or Dad. Because my success wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving me right. Of course, silence has a way of making people nervous. One night, 6 months after the wedding, I got a call from Mom. Her voice was hesitant, fragile. "Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to check on you." "I'm good, Mom," I said honestly. "Really?" There was a long pause. Your father says you're being dramatic, that you're punishing us. I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I just needed space. I understand, she said softly. But just so you know, I didn't agree with what he said at the wedding. That toast, it was cruel. I didn't say anything. And I saw the seating chart, she added. I didn't know until after. I would have changed it if I had. I know, Mom. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said something that caught me off guard. You've always been the strong one, you know. I almost laughed. That's not how Dad sees it. No, she agreed. But maybe that's because you don't need his approval the way Caleb does. We talked for another hour. She told me she missed me. That the house was quiet. That even Dad had been asking about me in his own roundabout way, grumbling about lack of respect, but checking my LinkedIn on his work laptop like a teenager stalking an ex. I didn't say it then, but it hit me. They'd noticed. The silence had worked. The absence spoke louder than anything I could have shouted in that reception hall. And yet, the part of me that had once wanted to explode everything, it wasn't gone. It was waiting patiently. Because even as I rebuilt myself, bit by bit, brick by brick, I knew the moment would come when Dad's house of cards would start to tilt. And when it did, I would be ready, not just to watch it fall, but to make sure it never stood again. And that moment, it came in the form of a phone call from Caleb. 3 weeks after my promotion. 2 weeks after I moved into my new place. 1 week after I finally started sleeping through the night without dreams of that wedding. He called late. Too late for it to be casual. Hey, he said, voice tight. I know we haven't talked in a while. I need to ask you something. I leaned back in my chair. Go on. You remember Dad's old house in Ashland? The one he sold a few years back? Yeah. Well, turns out it wasn't legally his to sell. I blinked. What? I didn't know either, but apparently Mom had joint ownership through some trust her father set up, and the buyer is suing because they claimed the paperwork was forged. They're dragging Dad into court over it. And why are you telling me this? I asked. Another pause. Because your name came up in an email. My pulse slowed. Here it was. The storm. But I didn't panic. I smiled. Because that folder, it didn't just contain the secret about the other child. It contained every financial lie Dad had told for the past 25 years. Emails, PDFs, conversations he thought were deleted. And my name was on the one that could burn it all down. Caleb didn't know what I was thinking, but he was about to find out. I let Caleb's words hang in the air for a few seconds longer than necessary. Your name came up. A lesser version of me, the old me, might have sputtered, might have denied or deflected or stumbled into a panic, assuming the worst. But this version, the one who'd been dismissed, disrespected, and disowned, only to rebuild himself stronger, he didn't flinch. So I leaned back, phone still pressed to my ear, and calmly said, interesting. Why would I come up in an email about a house I had nothing to do with? Caleb hesitated. I could hear him fiddling with something. I don't know exactly, he admitted. It was forwarded to me by Dad's lawyer. Some old correspondence from years ago. Something about a document audit. Your name was listed on the CC line. He paused, like he was trying to gauge how much I already knew. Look, man, this is serious. Like potentially criminal. Yeah, I said, letting the word roll off my tongue. Sounds like it. Another pause. Then Caleb dropped the polite tone. Okay, cut the crap. Did you save anything? Files, emails. I need to know what you have. There it was. The shift. The first crack in the armor. For the first time in my life, Caleb wasn't condescending. He wasn't smug. He was desperate. And that told me everything I needed to know. Why do you care? I asked flatly. Because Dad is pulling me into this mess, Caleb snapped. He used my name as a reference in some of those property transfers. He told me to sign a few forms a while back. Said it was just routine, but now the buyer's attorney is digging through everything. Wow, I said. And to think just a few months ago I was a disappointment. Now I'm suddenly important again. Come on, Ethan. No, I interrupted, voice sharper than I expected. You don't get to come to me now after everything. You and Dad humiliated me in front of 120 people. You pushed me to the edge and didn't blink. You've never once treated me like a brother, only like a placeholder. And now you're in trouble and I'm supposed to drop everything and help? I didn't know, he said, suddenly quiet. You didn't want to know. He didn't argue because he couldn't. I need time to think, I said and hung up. Then I turned to my laptop and opened that folder again. My little vault of truth. 5 GB of scanned PDFs, exported emails, phone call recordings, even an old letter my dad had written to a lawyer back when he thought no one else would ever read it. And that's when I started planning, not just to expose the truth, but to finally take back everything they had tried to strip from me. My name, my voice, my power. The first thing I did was call someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. My cousin Marcus. Marcus was the only other black sheep in our family. He'd been pushed out early, blamed for bad grades, reckless choices, and disrespecting the family name. But the truth was, he was just the first to stand up to Dad. He moved across the country at 21 and built a life without ever looking back. He picked up on the third ring. Ethan, he said, surprised. Man, I haven't heard from you since Grandpa's funeral. Yeah, what's going on? I need your help, I said. But first, I need to tell you something. Something about my father. We talked for 2 hours. I told him everything, starting with the wedding toast and ending with the fake property sale. Marcus whistled low. Damn, I always knew Uncle David was shady, but this is next level. Yeah, and it's all in writing. You planning to go nuclear? Eventually, I said, but smart nuclear. He laughed. All right. What do you need from me? Marcus, as it turns out, worked in real estate compliance. He wasn't just a black sheep, he was a black sheep with legal expertise. The perfect ally. Over the next few weeks, we built a strategy. He helped me organize the documents, highlighting every forged signature, every misfiled form, every timestamp that didn't match up. Then he referred me to someone named Sarah. Sarah was a forensic accountant. Not cheap, but terrifyingly good at what she did. When I sent her the file folder, she emailed me back the next day. You realize this could put someone in jail, right? I replied, that's the idea. While the investigation team did their thing, I went quiet. I didn't reply to Caleb's texts. Didn't return Mom's calls. Dad didn't reach out at all, which made sense. He'd rather die than admit he needed me. He'd already made his choice the moment he raised that champagne glass. But Caleb kept pushing. He showed up at my apartment once, unannounced. I didn't open the door. Instead, I watched through the peephole as he stood there in a tailored suit, knocking with increasing desperation. Ethan, come on, he said. We're family. You can't seriously want to see Dad go to jail? I didn't answer. Because that was the first time I realized, yes. Yes, I absolutely could. At the same time, something strange started happening. People in my extended family started reaching out. Aunt Michelle sent me a message. Heard what happened at the wedding. You didn't deserve that. My older cousin Ashley, who I hadn't spoken to in years, commented on one of my posts. Always knew you were the smart one. Even Mom sent a letter, handwritten, 2 pages long, saying she was sorry for not speaking up sooner. She said the house was cold without me. That Dad barely spoke anymore. That even Caleb seemed rattled. I didn't reply, but I saved the letter. Not because I forgave her, but because for once she was trying. Then the opportunity came. A nonprofit I followed put out a call for guest speakers. People willing to talk about personal experiences related to fraud and financial manipulation. They were hosting a panel called The Quiet Ones, aimed at exposing how often abuse hides behind polite smiles and family wealth. I signed up, and when they asked if I wanted to remain anonymous, I said no. I used my full name. I told my story, not with names or specific accusations, but with emotion, with truth. I talked about growing up under someone who weaponized disappointment, about being written off, about discovering by accident that my father had lied not just to his family, but to the law. The video went semi-viral in certain circles. Nothing massive, but enough. Enough that a few legal bloggers picked it up. Enough that one morning, a reporter emailed me asking for comment. And that's when I made my move. I sent an email to my father. Short, direct, cold. Subject, pending legal exposure. I have documentation of multiple property sales involving falsified signatures, unauthorized account withdrawals, and at least one undeclared dependent whose existence may impact inheritance claims. You have 7 days to come clean to Mom, to Caleb, to the people you lied to. If you don't, I will. Ethan. He didn't reply. Of course, he didn't. But 4 days later, Caleb called. He's freaking out, he said. He fired his lawyer. He thinks you're bluffing. I didn't say anything. Caleb sighed. Look, I know you don't owe me anything, but I didn't know about any of this. He used me, too. I believe that partially. Then maybe it's time you stop letting him. What are you planning to do? I paused and said, something permanent. The last piece fell into place on a Thursday morning. I got a call from Sarah. She had cross-referenced the payment trail between Dad's accounts and the woman we suspected was his former mistress. Not only did the money match, but there was clear evidence of monthly deposits labeled as educational expenses, which wouldn't be damning if the kid wasn't 23 now and living under a different last name. Sarah had even found a photo. The resemblance to Caleb was uncanny. So, I printed everything, put it all in a manila folder, and mailed it with no return address to my family's house, to my mother. But I didn't stop there. Because I wasn't just going to whisper the truth. I was going to make it echo. And I knew the exact moment to strike. The Charity Gala. A lavish annual event hosted by one of Dad's old military buddies. An invitation-only affair where reputation meant everything. Every year, Dad went. Every year he dragged Caleb along like a trophy. But this year someone else got an invite too, me. As a guest speaker. Because one of the event's themes was financial transparency. And my nonprofit panel, it had reached the organizer. I RSVP'd, and on the night of the gala, I stood backstage, folder in hand, watching as Dad laughed and shook hands with people in tailored suits and expensive dresses, completely unaware that the storm was already here. And I was holding the lightning. I'd never worn a tuxedo before that night. It wasn't because I couldn't afford one. After my promotion and the consulting work I picked up on the side, I could have rented 10. But I always saw tuxedos as something reserved for those events. The kind I never got invited to. The kind where I was either forgotten or deliberately excluded. The kind where Dad and Caleb belonged. But that night, I belonged. I arrived at the gala 10 minutes early, which put me ahead of fashionably late and just behind the truly important. The ballroom was massive. Gold trim, crystal chandeliers, the smell of money and perfume mingling in the air. A string quartet played something classical while servers moved silently, offering champagne. And there he was, my father, standing near the center of it all, like always. Perfect posture, silver cufflinks, the polished gleam of someone who believed the world still hadn't caught up to his greatness. Caleb stood beside him, less confident than usual, a little stiff, eyes darting. He'd seen the folder. That much was clear. He wasn't laughing or charming anyone. He looked like a man trying to hold a house of cards still in a wind tunnel. They hadn't seen me yet. I kept to the shadows, sipping water and watching the pieces move. Then the host took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the mic, "thank you all for being here tonight. Our theme is truth in financial leadership. A topic more timely than ever." A soft wave of polite applause. "I'd like to introduce someone whose story moved me. A story about integrity, about silence, and about speaking up when it matters most. Please welcome Ethan Whitmore." And just like that, every head turned, my father's included. His eyes found mine. And for the first time in my life, I saw panic. Not frustration, not disappointment. Panic. I walked slowly to the stage. Calm, collected, every step deliberate. The lights hit me like a wave, but I didn't blink. I stood behind the podium, took a slow breath, and began. "When I was growing up," I said, "I thought silence was strength. I thought keeping your head down, working hard, and not rocking the boat would eventually earn you respect. But what I've learned is that silence often protects the wrong people." I let that sit for a second. My father taught me that. Not through words, but through actions. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I glanced at him. He stood frozen, jaw tight. Caleb whispering something into his ear that he clearly wasn't hearing. "I won't name names tonight," I continued. "Because this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. It's about recognizing the damage that comes from prioritizing image over integrity." I shared a carefully curated version of the story. How I discovered falsified documents, fraudulent transactions, years of deceit. I spoke of the pain of being overlooked, the weight of carrying secrets that didn't belong to me, the exhaustion of pretending everything was fine just to preserve a lie. And then I dropped the hammer. "These documents," I said, holding up the now infamous manila folder, "have been submitted to the appropriate legal authorities. Investigations are ongoing. The evidence is clear. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: eventually, the truth finds its way out." Silence. Thick. Tense. Charged. I didn't need applause. I didn't need validation. I stepped down from the podium and walked past my father without acknowledging him. The crowd parted like a sea. Eyes followed me all the way to the exit. And that was enough. The fallout wasn't immediate. It never is with men like my father. They scramble, they flail, they deny. For 2 weeks, he did exactly that. Told everyone I was bitter. That I'd fabricated everything. That I was lashing out because I couldn't handle Caleb's success. He played the part well, right down to the forced tears when he called Mom the only real victim in all of this. But the thing about forensic accounting, it doesn't care about your reputation. It cares about numbers. And the numbers didn't lie. Neither did the signatures, or the time-stamped emails, or the voice memos. The IRS launched a full audit. 2 private property buyers filed fraud complaints. His name was quietly removed from the board of the veterans charity he once chaired. By the end of the month, 3 different lawsuits were pending. His lawyer quit. The house in Charleston, his retirement escape, was frozen as part of a legal hold. Mom filed for legal separation shortly after. I never asked her to, but when she called, I could hear something in her voice I'd never heard before. Freedom. As for Caleb, he played dumb, tried to distance himself, claimed he never knew, that he was just following instructions. But the digital trail was messy. Sloppy. He'd signed more than he realized. Involved himself in more than he remembered. The SEC sent him a letter of inquiry regarding his role in an investment deal tied to Dad's fraudulent accounts. Nothing criminal, but enough to scare his employer. He was let go quietly 2 months later. Last I heard, he was bartending in Burlington while trying to land a job that didn't require background checks. I didn't feel sorry for him. He'd had every chance to stand beside me. He chose to stand on me instead. People often ask what I gained from all this. I didn't get money. I didn't want it. I didn't get some viral video or a book deal. I didn't even get a thank you from half the people who whispered behind my back at that wedding. But I got peace. I got silence that wasn't suffocating. I got space to breathe in a world where I didn't have to shrink myself to fit someone else's mold. I got late mornings and strong coffee and quiet evenings where I sat on my balcony watching the sun melt behind the city's skyline. My skyline. Mine. And every now and then, I get a message. Someone from that wedding. Someone who laughed when my dad raised his glass and called me a disappointment. They write things like, "I didn't realize how bad it was. You were always the better man. I'm sorry for not speaking up." I don't hold it against them. People follow the loudest voice in the room. For years, that was my father. But not anymore. Now, they listen when I speak. Because the quiet ones, we're not weak. We're just waiting for the right moment. And when it comes, we don't shout. What do you think? Was this the only way?